Welcome to Origins by the Esports Awards. I'm your host, Trevor Quickshot Henry, and today I have a very special guest, a fellow fan of Call of Duty, longtime member of the Esports Awards panel, and as far as I'm concerned, one of the best commentators in the game. It's my pleasure to introduce Alan Brice. Bricey, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm good. That's far too nice of an intro. Way too nice for it to get on.
That is the job. That is the job.
I am aware. Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to being here. It's a lot to talk about.
There is a lot to talk about, and obviously we're doing this online, so there's a little bit of lag, but more importantly than that, this is Origins. So there's a few topics I want to dive into deeper in the episode, talking about the Esports Awards panel, talking about the fact that you've been on that panel for 10 years, talk about the industry, maybe some of your journey to commentary, but that all begins with your introduction to gaming. What is your earliest memory of playing video games?
So my earliest memory is kind of a weird one because I still don't really remember. I'll have to go look it up. But I remember playing like an F1 game with my dad, like a pixel car moving on the screen back and forth. I even remember, I think it had a joystick. That's how long ago it was. So it was quite some time ago. And then obviously, you know, if you move past that, it kind of gets into the more kind of realistic thing of Sega Mega Drive and stuff where everybody kind of starts, you know, Alex Kidd, Sonic and all that sort of stuff.
I will tell you this, everyone starting is a bit of an over-exaggeration because I'm a little older, so I've got earlier memories. I think it might have actually been F1 Race on the 8-bit, the NEX, 1984 it came out. I actually just Googled it while we were talking. That's irrelevant. But what was the stepping stones from playing on console games to then maybe competing to then going to LANs? Like, take me through the steps that you went through.
Realistically, I've always loved gaming too, probably to my parents' chagrin for most of the time. But I think I always loved RTSs, and I think I got kind of into it. I always loved Halo, Call of Duty, all that sort of thing you kind of grow up with. StarCraft 2 was a big fan of mine when I moved into competitive. Halo as well. I love people like T-Squared. He was always an inspiration of mine. But really, I kind of first dipped my toe in the esports world with COD 4, which is technically, we call it the second year on console. It's a very weird thing that people didn't move over to, I think, World at War on the competitive side of it. But also Halo at the same time. Like Halo 3 was wonderful. It's kind of when I really kind of dipped into the community.
I mean, listen, I have a little bit of a bone to pick with Modern Warfare 2 specifically because it stole my Call of Duty community from PC, which is where I played, to console.
Yeah.
But I know that you have a long history with going to LANs. I know you started your professional journey, you know, going to these competitive events, to these, you know, Gfinity events and the like. What was that like? And how did it help you transition from just being a player to being a professional?
So, interesting, like when I used to kind of compete on game battles and stuff. So here's a story. I don't know if I've really told this one before. But basically when I was first trying to compete and I had a kind of a community team, funny enough, I was on the COD team and the Halo team, which is abhorrent to people now, obviously, if you tell them that. But when we were going to our first event, it was supposed to be, I believe, XL7 back in the day. So we were going to go to XL7 as a team, as a community team from a LAN center near where I live, all ready to go, and they kind of cancelled the event. So the event that replaced it and ran at the same time was an event called ECL1. Now, I was supposed to be there, but we didn't go because when I spoke to one of my teammates way back then, it's like, hey, it's all right, it's the same price, we can go and everything. Have you got the money? He went, no, unfortunately, I spent it on drugs. I can't go to this event anymore. And I'm like, okay, I guess we're not going to ECL1. So my first kind of event where I played on a LAN was ECL3 in, that was Loughborough. And that's when I kind of got into it because I always wanted to be a community manager and do a kind of a content side of it. So I started doing interviews there, and I produced a sort of a semi-documentary sort of thing. Going to Loughborough, that didn't really work out, so we did a better one at ECL5. And after that, I realised I wasn't too much of a competitor and moved into commentating.
Well, listen, how old were you at this point? The reason I'll ask, I went to my first LAN when I was about 15 years old. I competed until I was about 22. I had aspirations of doing well. I got from South Africa. I got to compete at Antwerp Esports Festival in Europe. I played against European COD players and I went, nope, I am shit. So I stopped and went commentating. But I was 22. So what was your age bracket?
Oh, well, here's the thing. I think I was around 20 when I first went to LAN, and then stopped when I was about 21 and a half. I was still like competing and playing game battles and all that sort of thing, but it was more of a, the competitive side of it was fun. I wasn't like I've never been a super die-hard competitor. And if you've ever met any competitive player ever, they're like a different breed of person. Like, you understand this if you ever like played a casual game with them. They can't relax ever. I still play with some now and they get very angry over casual games. It's like it's inbred in them to always win. I'm not 100% like that. I'm a little bit more laid back when I play. And I also remember watching some of the commentators back then who would, kind of go on to be my friends. And I was thinking, I can do this. So, like, that's something I'm quite interested in.
So how did those early broadcasts and early tournaments shape your opinion and interest in commentary? And then how did it influence your first steps as a shoutcaster?
So that's an interesting one, because I remember having a debate about this with another veteran recently, because you can tell who's been in the industry a long time from various things they do. Now, you got to remember, way back then, it wasn't a career. Like, I know people now will, young people, and I'm not trying to sound, but you walk into an esport, and if you're good enough, you'll get picked up, and there'll be money available. There'll be travel available. There'll be all these kind of things given to you, and resources and spectator modes. Way back then, that wasn't really a thing. Like, I remember sleeping on floors. I remember having to run events and do production and all these kind of things. I even ran an event way back for £75 a day. And you're thinking, well, that's, it could be worse. So not only did I provide all the equipment for the broadcasting, I set the event up. I was the head admin, head of production, and commentating on this event for £75 a day. So I was doing 16, 17-hour days and then going into the next part of it. And I think that, for me, one of the things that's always going to lock down for me is because there is a lot of work to do, and I dislike arriving late to events. I dislike leaving early from events. I am there all the time because I know it can be harder. So when I go into it, I try to give the most amount of effort I can at all points. And I think sometimes it's easy to be spoiled by the glitz and glamour sometimes in esports now. People throwing money around, people making things very, very easy. I'm not frustrated when it's difficult. I am frustrated that things could be better, but it may be just a little bit easier for me to take the long, hard days than it could be when it's easy. And I try and instill that when I work with colleagues and people as a team. I've always said to them, I said, look, as soon as we sign that contract, we are a team. We got to take care of everybody, make sure everybody's okay. If somebody's feeling under the weather, you take over them and make sure they feel okay. Nobody wants to feel left out or aggrieved. For me, I've never been competitive with colleagues. I'm competitive with myself, because my greatest advancements in shoutcasting have always come from honest and real feedback, which is actually a rarity in this industry. If you can have a group of people who genuinely tell you, and you can genuinely tell you what you need to do better, and you can take that on board, you'll improve so much faster. But as you probably know, that's not that common. There is a lot of
it's not
infighting, but almost kind of like competitiveness and friction sometimes.
Can I share my opinion on this? My opinion on this is that, number one, in the realm of shoutcasting, there are a limited number of seats, of microphones per broadcast. So it's an inherently competitive field. Secondly, in my opinion, there's not enough of a universal understanding of how to even give feedback, of how to define what's good, what's not. I have a philosophy. There's no such thing as right and wrong in commentary. There's liked and there's disliked. And that's like a philosophy that I have when I approach it. It really helped me grow in a similar vein to what you were saying, is that once I began to get feedback, once I was very critical of myself, it helped me grow. And I will challenge you. Maybe you're not competitive externally, but I can hear the ambition in your voice. I can hear the passion in your story. And it led you to casting global stage. It led you to doing European massive events for Call of Duty. What are some of those memories when you sit here and you reflect on those big events? What are some of your favorites?
So it's interesting you say that. I've always been a perfectionist, and it's what drives me. I never live up to my own standards, but I demand perfection from everything. It's a horrible thing to burden. And if you ever spoke to anyone I've worked with, I'll tell you I'm so hypercritical of myself. It's sickening. But going through this as well, like I have done events all over the world. I've worked in so many esports because I was a host for a while. I kind of jumped between everything, and I've done all kinds of commentary all over the place. I think still, even now, my favorite memories are either way back in the day doing incredible work in the European scene, or, I was part of Gfinity when it came up, when it was a 7-man startup operation. I was there, I was building events. So I've run multiple events myself. I've done the production side of it. I think that's some of the things I look back on fondly, because it's given me a foundation to understand events a little bit better than some people who just kind of walk in and do commentary. So I kind of understand even little things like lighting and stuff. It kind of bugs me sometimes at events when it's wrong. Because production, people really don't know this, in esports is such a wild west of who you're going to get sometimes. Other than that, I will say this. My favorite times was when I was in the CDL League full time, before they changed it up with the budget and didn't bring us over from Europe. The colleagues I made in those 2 years, I consider lifelong friends. And that's what we were talking about earlier with the feedback. That's where the best feedback I ever got came from. To sit in a VOD review with peers of mine and be able to tear down maps, tear down moments from everybody. And I can't express this enough, how genuine it was to go over storylines. Like there was a particular map on a Call of Duty title that we didn't think as a collective, every customer was like, this isn't working for the way we want it to go, right? The map isn't working. And we worked out over about 2 hours a universal way to better cast that map so people would find it more entertaining. Now, the fans never knew that we had changed our entire methodology of working at this map. Just this one map that was giving everybody problems because they always felt like it was too fast, too soon, right? And we've always said, if you start at an 8, when you go to a 10, it feel like a 10.
You know where to go. Exactly.
Shouting and speed isn't excitement. Excitement is built up. It is moments that you elevate through careful storytelling, cadence, tone, and flow. It is a very fundamental aspect of casting that some people don't get. You can be incredibly charming. You can be a wordsmith, and you can have an incredible voice. But until you understand the journey that you need to take the viewers on, and for them to actually engage with what you're watching, you won't reach that next level. And that all comes with working out exactly what you need to say and how to say it. And I firmly believe in emotive casting. I do more play-by-play now, but statistics and everything, for me, it's not about giving you, this is a 67% chance they'll make this X, Y, and Z.
No,
it's
about what it means.
Battle against the statistic. How do they overcome it? What does this mean? Oh, they're strong here. It is a fortress for them, a fortification the other team has to overcome. And that's something that builds a mental image. Go on.
Listen, I'm genuinely excited and motivated because it's almost like you've been in my brain and you've stolen the exact way that I would discuss this with the League of Legends people when I was at Riot and some of the commentators that I speak to in Valorant and the CS scene here in Europe. 100% agree. How did you develop that understanding? Because I know for a fact, the first time that you were at ECL, you did not have this awareness.
No. In fact, I didn't have this awareness for a long time. In fact, I would say that this is only something that I've really cerebralized in the last 5 years, because I was always an okay commentator, right? I had to change my entire voice. The Americans didn't particularly like my Essex accent. This isn't my real voice. It's a lot more kind of Essex thick where I'm from and where I used to work. So that was always a part of it. So my voice had to change. And then I was a host for a while. I really enjoyed hosting. It was very open and freeing, and I could kind of dive into the minutiae of stuff I wanted to do. And then when I kind of took commentary a bit more seriously, and it was in the same realms of working with Chris Tunn, who's a longtime duo of mine and one of my very best friends. We were like, we need to do this better. And it was weird being almost a newcomer, because I'm a veteran, but it was a newcomer going into like the CDL, the corporate side of it. And it was difficult for me to hold back my opinions on what we could do better, because I knew it could be done better. And
there are politics that need to be played there.
Yes, which I quickly threw out the window if you ask anybody who was in any of those meetings. It was kind of how I wanted it to go, and I realized that the best way to engage people and fans is to express how I'm feeling with the emotions that are going on. What do I see happening and why you should be interested? It's easy. It's very, very easy in esports to have a big game between the two best teams with the biggest fan bases and the crowd roaring behind you. It is not easy to take a game between two middle-of-the-pack teams and make them love it, to make them understand what's at stake here. Because people, and this is one of the things that fans and sometimes even some talent do this, and it irritates me no end. They downplay the expertise, the sacrifice, and the professionalism and skill of some of these players. If a player isn't top 5, they'll kind of put them to one side. I'm like, these are still the best 50 players in the game.
Yep.
Out of millions, these are the best 50. And they train over and over again, and they are still the best players. They would make you look like a child if you played them. And once you can get the fans to understand that and be like, this is incredibly high level. No, they are not the number 1 superstar, but they are like 12 to 18 and they are fighting 20 to 24. It is unbelievably how good this game is. And I need you to understand what's at stake here, right? It is easy to get lost in the sauce. And I always said to them, I said, there is never a bad game. There is just bad storylines because you haven't found the good ones. There's always something that undercome and
also bad delivery. Because I know I'm interrupting, but I think not only is it finding that story or finding the hook is maybe a bit more of a universal way of talking, regardless of the game, regardless of whether it's information-based, stats-based, player-based, human story, emotion, history, legacy, stakes, whatever. Once you find that hook, there's also a lot of skill in delivering it. I mean, anybody watching this will hear the passion in your voice and will hear your ability to convey emotion. It's so apparent. I want to challenge you though. Think about all of that you've learned in commentary and distill for me maybe between 2 and 5 things that play-by-play commentators need to be able to do to be good at their job. And let's try to hit them as like bullet points.
Okay. I'm going to give you a wild one for number 1. Number 1 is you need to relax.
Okay, let's go.
And I don't mean this is in you need to relax when you're talking on stage and commentary. I mean you need to relax in general. There are so many commentators I've worked with who are just terrible people to work with, right? If you bring a negative attitude or vibe to a green room or an event or anything else you are dealing with, that will permeate everybody in there. As you know, when you go in a green room, it can be very friendly, very talkative. Everyone's very, very close. If you're bringing that down by being the wrong kind of person, you will ruin everything. And here's the other part of it. People won't want to work with you. And people don't want to work with you. 9 times out of 10, there's always 1 out of 10 that gets away with it. 9 times out of 10, you're not going to work with them. And it becomes a problem with you later on. And if you can't work, you can't learn. So if number 1, you need to relax. Number 2. One of the fundamentals is tempo, right? We've spoken before a minute ago about don't start at an 8 because you need somewhere to go. You need to understand that it's not a race all the time. You need to understand, like we have in Call of Duty with the hard points, right? P1, as a golden rule that, sometimes you can break, you kind of ignore it, right? The first hill, you kind of ignore. You're still kind of warming up the audience. You're talking about parts of the game because essentially both teams are just going to run in and hammer this point. And there's not going to be a lot of points gained by either side, but it's very fast and furious. But you don't start fast and furious. You go, oh, he's got 3, because it doesn't mean much. Yeah. And the audience is not ready to go, because where do you go from there? The battle has only just begun. There isn't really anything to go for. So make sure your tempo is even and measured, and be aware of when to reset it. You cannot always go a mile a minute. And even in some of my best cuts, I've seen areas where I'm like, I haven't let it go.
And also, you need to practice stopping. Like it's a learned skill. Like you respond to the game, and sometimes it needs more, and sometimes it needs less. So let's practice stopping. Okay, give me a third one.
Storytelling, I think, is probably my third that I will go with here, because it encompasses a lot, right? We spoke a minute ago about statistics, and this is a percentage here. We talked about this on some of the hills on Hardpoint, and I talk about Hardpoint because it's easy to kind of break down the way of working. When you go into something like a P3, right? One team's better than the other. How does this work? Is it coming towards the end of the game? Are you on the first or second set of rotations? What does it mean? is this a good opportunity for them to get more here? Is somebody struggling? Is somebody doing well? What does this mean for streaks later on the game, right? Are you focusing on a specific player you think is going to do well or has performed well? Where are your key points? There is so much that goes into storytelling that sometimes you miss. And I've always said, it's very easy because people get fixated on the biggest players in every game. It's an easy thing. Like I'll give you Call of Duty, for example. There was a kind of a scump problem, right? Love the man, great. But people would always really go the extra mile to when a scump play would happen, because obviously it's going to get clicked. It's very, very easy. And scump is magnificent, done more for Call of Duty than I can possibly imagine. But there were 47 other players in the game. And when they got into storyline meetings, which is something that I insisted on when I was in the league, I was like, look, there are a dozen other players we could highlight who we don't know enough about. Like I think Joe Deceives from Call of Duty, when he was a rookie and came up, was one of the ones that's like, hey, let's highlight him. I think it's a good story. I think realistically, this is something that we could highlight on years to come. And he's still going on to do very well. In fact, he's probably one of the upcoming fan favorites, even though he's now probably on his third year or something. And I think once you understand that, yes, players will build their own relationship and content, and people will fall in love with them regardless. Sometimes you have to do a bit of the legwork and help some of the other players along, right? Even things like nicknames can take on a whole legend of their own through one throwaway comment for, a decade. Once you realize you have that power to not dictate a narrative, because you are still always going to be the kind of addition to what is already fantastic. Once you realize that, hey, every single one of these players is amazing. Every single one can be a legend, a myth, a story that will be told over and over again. You get to choose that, and you get to find it, and you have to. It is not an easy thing to go, hey, also, let's make this player to be a big deal, because it's sports, right? And sports is actually the antithesis of storytelling.
Even if you are choosing to use a nickname, or you as a commentator decide to lean on a specific player, specific storyline, or a specific stat line, it also is the ones that resonate with the fans. And there's also a skill in picking that. Look, I love this, and I could spend the rest of the entire podcast just debating commentary. I will come back to this. Maybe you and I need a separate conversation. but I want to move this into a little bit of like longevity, adaptation, mentorship, because you mentioned something you've worked in, like what, 15 esports? List off the titles. Like just rattle them off. What many games? Let's go.
Right. Well, Call of Duty, it'd be easy to just list 15 Call of Duties, but I'm not going to do that. So, Call of Duty, I've done.
They all count. We'll just count them all from Call of Duty 4.
Yeah. So I've done Halo. I've launched Halo. I've done Call of Duty. I've done Civilization, Rainbow Six. I've done Gears. I've done Rocket League, FIFA, PES. Oh, you're gonna get me now, because this is difficult once we get out of those. Oh, I've done Formula E. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Listen, the point is made. The point is made because there are very few people in our industry that can list off that many number of titles over 10 to 15 years that you've been working, right? So first of all, congratulations. Secondly, how the hell do you adapt and learn and bring this level of passion to each of these different titles?
So it's not always commentary when I've worked in some of these games. Some of them it is, some of them it's not. Hosting is an interesting one and an eye-opening one that allowed me to be more comfortable in esports than I was when I was just doing commentary. Like I said, I never had much belief in my commentary before like 5 years ago, through some negative experiences. But realistically, you've got to always remember that it's always great, right? This is one of the things about esports. Esports is great. It is a competition. There is intensity, there is passion, and there's always something to keep a great eye on, right? So for me, the adaptation is not, how do I, get into the absolute minutiae? I'm not always hired to be, the super in-depth analysis of a game. I'm not going to be able to walk off the street and do that. It's impossible. And never has that been more apparent than when I think I did the NLC out in Berlin. Was it Berlin? I was in Germany. Anyway, and I was like, you know what? These analysts are incredible. Like, I sit down with them. I was in the green room, and they've never met me. And we got along well. And I was like, hey, I play League of Legends. I enjoy League of Legends so much, but I am like not that good, like emerald level at best, on with the wind behind me, and they would just be able to break it down so concisely. And then I'm like, that applies to everything. Some of the esports I've worked in, it's more of that casual exhibitionist style, and you have to realize that sometimes they don't want that super in-depth, screaming, raw passion of esports. Some of them are, I almost want to say, like marketing esports. They want it a little bit more casual, a little bit more friendly. Let's have a good time, rather than get into the super hyper focus, because there is that other side of esports that is just competitive gaming, and people enjoy competition, but they don't enjoy it to the absolute nth degree that some people do.
Can I summarize this for you? That the energy that I'm getting is work smarter, not harder, right? You need to know the role. You need to know what you need to do. If you have people around you can pull stuff out of, well, your goal is to dig. Your goal is not to be knowledgeable. If you're there to be hype man, if you're there to be info man, you're going to apply. I also like KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Those are lessons that I learned in commentary. What is one of the strongest memories that comes to mind of either someone teaching you a lesson in esports, whether it's industry or commentary, or the greatest response you've had teaching someone? What comes to mind first?
I think I probably already mentioned this. I think it was the way to kind of break down a map was always a kind of an eye-opener to me. To sometimes you need a little bit more structure before you can be free-flowing. And that is actually a great lesson for esports in kind of general. It's a rule of thumb. Keep things simple is a very good way of doing it. You've got to be smooth before you're fast, right? Smooth is always better than fast. Smooth is better than flashy. Smooth is better than just about anything. So be smooth first. But in terms of maybe mentoring people, that's an interesting one, because I don't really consider myself a mentor, even though some people have said something along those lines, because possibly about the way I talk about esports, as you've probably started to realize. I've always said to people, and this particular person, I don't want to name it because I think they're fantastic, had a bit of a rough start when I first started walking with them, because they were kind of thrown in the deep end with myself and Tan, and it was like, hey, we're veterans. We're also known each other for over a decade. Like, I don't want you to think this is cliquey, but obviously we're just going to, me and him have this very friendly sort of banter with each other. Like, we just go at each other all the time, on and off camera. And it's like, so just understand everything's cool, and the sooner you join in, the better it'll be. You need to understand that we're actually very, very laid back in the way we look at things. I said, once you realize that, it might seem scary because we kind of know what we're doing, you'll realize that this is actually probably the best environment you could be in, because we're not going to be too worried about, people really kind of overanalyze, like, oh, I messed up a word there, or I got a statistic wrong. I'm like, look,
that's not
some
the most
fan
important.
somewhere might give, some fan might give you issues for it somewhere, but most fans don't understand what we're doing, like, in general. Like, they don't understand all the stuff that goes in behind it to give a polished show. It takes an awful lot of work to make it look effortless, right? So it is difficult for it, right? So that person now has gone on to be incredible, just simply unbelievably good, and is continuing to improve at a rate of knots. And I'm like, and they actually said this is something they said. They said, look, he goes, you were right. He goes, I've worked with some really difficult people in esports after you. He goes, it was almost a bit of a shock. I said, because you were very laid back with kind of approaching it as a rookie, and some people aren't. And I was like, I told you. I said, it's unfortunate.
I will send you a thank you on behalf of everybody who has had the pleasure of working with you. Kudos, because again, I'm a veteran of about 12 years professionally. I've been competing and playing for another 10 after that. Like, I'm one of the old boys, so I've seen it all, and I know exactly what it's like. And we don't have enough time to dive into everything, but I think we've covered some of your childhood. We've covered some of the lands, exploring, becoming a professional. We've talked about CDL. We talked about commentary. One of the big reasons that I wanted to bring you here was to help explain to me the Esports Awards, because I am aware that you have been on the Esports Awards panel for the decade that it has been operating. So let me actually start at the end, and then we'll work to the panel questions, like the growth of the Esports Awards, the growth of the scene, the growth of your own industry, like yourself. they're kind of parallel in many ways. So with the focus on Esports Awards, let's talk about the decade. How much has it grown? How is it different from when you started?
Oh, it's way different now. It's still a pain. It's an absolute pain. One of the things that I always find very funny is that while I have been doing this for the entire 10 years and kind of act as the chairman in the meetings now, is that I.
By the way, just explain that. Just explain that. The chairman of what? The chairman of what?
I'm the chairman of the panel. Is technically what I am right now. So
and it's a pain in your butt for a decade.
It is. I don't really talk about it. Somebody the other day, I've never. But yeah. I went, yeah, I am. It's because I don't see it as. Some people might be like, oh, shout out from the rooftops, write on their LinkedIn with some emotional, positive motivational quote, and I'm like, no, it's something I am passionate about because the Esports Awards has gone through 10 years, 10 iterations of itself, and has moved forward in so many ways. There have been missteps. This is one of the things I will always say. There have been missteps, and there are still missteps that are being made. There are mistakes every single year, and it is always a nightmare to try and get everything as correct as possible. And I've been there for 10 years.
This is coming from a perfectionist. Listen. Hang on. As somebody that's been on the shows and has just learned how hypercritical you are, I acknowledge that anybody with enough self-reflection will say that. But by the same token, I think it's done more positive than the missteps, right?
Oh, no. So, okay, yeah. So here's one of it's a good thing you kind of brought me up on it because there was about to be a long rant about the Esports Awards. And you'll understand why when we talk about it at length. The Esports Awards, and one of the reasons that I've kind of stuck with it is I've always believed, and one of the fundamental things I always is I want to be a positive influence in esports. And I think the Esports Awards does that. And it's simple to see when you go to the awards and see people who get recognition for something incredible they've done. Things like Lifetime Achievement or the panel's choices it's now called. These people deserve to be recognised. And don't get me wrong, there are still many, many critics of the Esports Awards out there, from all the way back from people who believed it was being rigged by one company or another, to people from one company refusing to be involved. And the millions of stories I could tell you is unbelievable. But the Esports Awards tries to highlight the best and brightest each and every single year. And maybe, just maybe, people who weren't fans of a particular esport or didn't know about something incredible happening in esports might find out at the Esports Award when their favourite person doesn't win. And while it may be terrible that your favourite person doesn't win, maybe you're like, oh, why is this other person won instead, or this other team or company or whatever? And like, oh, actually, that's pretty amazing. They've done an awful lot. And they wouldn't have known about that without the Esports Awards. So I think for me, it's always been one of these ones, and because we changed the awards change the actual awards almost every single year. Even this year, I think there was 6 changes, from changing of criteria to awards dropping in and coming out and stuff to try and get the right balance of where the award should be. So in terms of like positivity, it's always like who's the most deserving. And I'll give you an example, right? So one of the constants over 10 years, right? And this has happened this year as well. And it's why I kind of talk about, being in it from the beginning, is I can give precedent very, very easily. The biggest and brightest is what the award should go to, not somebody who hasn't won, so maybe it's their time. And this debate has come up on things like Esports Game of the Year. There are monsters of esports in that category, right? Like your League of Legends, your Counter-Strike. And they're basically at the top of this list every single year. Now, in terms of fairness, you would say, oh, well, maybe one of the other games deserve to win. Unfortunately, that's not how it works, right? It's unfortunate because you can't highlight everybody. But it's one of the things I find myself repeating almost every single year in various categories, is like, we're looking for the best of the year. That's what this award is about. Have we given this award to the best this year? And if we've done that, then the panel has done its job correctly. If it hasn't, then there's something either in our process or somewhere else that is wrong.
This is also a challenge. Right? Because one of the questions that I actually had was about the weight of recognition, right? How do you differentiate who is good, who's deserving to be nominated, which games, which titles, which broadcasters? And I'm going to be honest, as a perfectionist, Brice, I can only apologize to you because you are never going to solve this. This is subjective content, right? Subjective matter, which is why you have a panel, why you have a variety of people, which I want you to unpack in a second. And what you determine is good is different to what Bob or Jane or Mary or anybody else down the road. It's like, so this is a thankless position, but I love how you framed that, how you talked about how the essence, the energy, the North Star is to find the brightest, the biggest, the best, right? So give me a little bit of insight into maybe how the panel does that. Like, is it a debate? Does everyone get a veto? Is there nominations? Talk to me just a little bit about that process, because it's not something that I've heard of, and I'm somebody who's nominated this year.
Don't worry, I'll soon get that one out. Anyway, so this is an interesting one. So I'll go through the process very, very quickly, and then I'll give you an example of where it went wrong. So the process is then as follows. Because it's a very important lesson, and it happened about 5 years ago. So essentially, the process is quite simple. So there is, obviously, we get into the panel. So the panel at the moment is some crazy number. Bearing in mind, this started with 7 people in a conference room in some place in London, putting sealed envelopes for votes, right? It's now over 90 people strong from all kinds of aspects of the industry. There are diehard experts in there. There are heads of the industry, from TOs, organizers, publishers, everybody's in there, right? Players, all of them. So you get into a call, right? And people will submit notes if they need to. There's also curated supporting information normally around some of these. So Esports Awards will go away and do some research for context, because that's one of the most difficult things about all of this is take myself, for example. I consider myself an expert in Call of Duty, but not everybody on that panel will be. Their vertical won't always overlap as much as they would like to. So they need to be educated. They need the context of why this person should be, or why this team should be put forward for a nomination. So these nominations go on for a week or two, depending on how many calls and how quickly we get through them. Sometimes they take forever. Sometimes they don't. And everybody will put forward essentially names, and they will vouch for them, and they will talk a little bit about why this person or this team or whatever needs to be in this category this year, right? So I'll go on and we'll be like, hey, also do your extra research, or here is some extra supporting information as well to help you decide, right? So that all goes out to everybody. So the panel for each award will be given 5 nominations. I believe it's 5 this year. I'm sure I have to tell me if it isn't. 5 nominations, and it's all blind. Nobody knows what you voted for. Not even me, right? I'm sure if I really needed to, I could go in and get this information, but I don't look at it. It's something that the Esports Awards doesn't share with me as a matter of course. It is just, here are the nominations. Everybody can... So even if you disagree with what somebody said on the call, right, you can still nominate for the people you think deserve to be there. Now, once that's all done, and I think the public also kind of gets a weigh in... with there, because it's a lot of the awards are split 75 panel to 25% public, right? It's a very important process of it. The public does get to weigh in, so that all gets shortlisted. And unfortunately, one of the things that myself and a few other people on the panel will go and look at is, where do we put the cutoff, right? It's always the worst part of any year is to look at the nomination shortlist, because I'm like, right, there's 20 people with nominations. Where does that cut-off line go? Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's really not. And every year is a conversation about how many people can we actually nominate in this award. And it's actually getting bigger year on year, because it's so difficult with the amount of esports and how big the industry is. So that all goes on for a while. It has to all be signed off. Like I said, there is a panel council that will go through the list and try to just catch anything that's wrong. And that's not foolproof, because it goes through the ESA, it goes through us to try and make sure nothing's wrong in that aspect, or we haven't missed anybody. And we have a wild card system that helps catch people that have been missed. Because sometimes, if you're talking about 20 esports across various continents, there might be somebody who slips through the gap, right? And the wild card system can help bring them back in. So it's a catch-all. Once that's all done and it goes out to the votes and everything else, and you'll see that I think that process just happened. So the nominations will have gone out. So that will ruminate for a while. Everybody will start voting and going through and everything else. And now the next part of it is the next series of calls I have to call is for the voting. Now the voting works more or less the same way as the nominations, except we only really talk about the outstanding in each category. Whereas nominations is almost more like a nod, like, hey, you're great enough to be recognized.
Got it.
You are in this category. Making the nomination category is huge for anybody who's ever done it, right? And I hate people who downplay nominations. Oh, what if I don't win? Doesn't matter. Being nominated is massive.
Yes, you're
right?
one of the 5 or the 10
huge.
best on the planet. One of the 5 or the 10 best. Yes, I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
So we get into the vote, and the voting is the extreme example. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's very, very difficult, and we can have people argue for 20, 25 minutes over a single category of who is the best in this category. And here's the best part. That isn't settled, apart from 2 awards. Only 2 awards are ever settled on the day, and I think that's Lifetime Achievement and Panel's Choice. They're done with everybody in the call until we hash it out. Every other one goes back to blind voting. So regardless of the passion and the fire and everything else that happens in the context brought into that call, if you are still not swayed one way or the other, you can put your vote in.
Vote yourself.
And then obviously the public votes are added on top of that, which are graded on a scoring curve so that people kind of get their scoring correctly. And then that's all put forward. It's all done blind. Nobody knows who's won until the award day, except when that person is I don't even think they do it this way. They used to do it like this. I haven't attended in about 3 years. You could kind of find out 15 seconds to a minute or two before it, because you would know you were going up to give the award. That's about it.
Yeah.
And people message me like, who's got it? Who's what? I don't know. I have no idea.
I will tell you this. I will tell you this. I want to say thank you, by the way, because this is something I personally haven't heard. I really, really in-depth breakdown from start to finish. And when I was actually preparing for this podcast, I spoke to some of the guys at the Esports Awards and, did a little bit of digging on yourself. And I literally got a heads up about your approach to work and your perfectionism, right? And your very critical eye. I want to challenge you now, as briefly as you can, because we don't have a huge amount of time. What is the biggest positive impact, in your opinion, that the Esports Awards has had on the industry? And only positive, no critical review.
See, it's difficult. It's difficult. Okay, positive. It is a once-a-year celebration of the best and brightest in an industry that is fragmented by its very nature, that all could be celebrated in one place. It is that simple. League of Legends mixes with Call of Duty. Counter-Strike mixes with Halo. Everybody's there. Fighting games are becoming more prominent. Mobile games are now coming into the fold. We are reaching more into Eastern audiences, right? Esports truly knows no bounds across this planet. And more than ever, the Esports Awards get to celebrate that in one place at one time. And everybody deserves that chance to be in the spotlight. The best and the brightest who've worked all year, yes, you'll win your championships. Yes, you'll be the best. But being recognized by a vertical of people who already love you and being recognized by the industry and everybody at large is a very different thing. And for me, it is the one cohesive point of esports that everybody can go towards, because everybody celebrates in every vertical, every esport, every game, and every country can celebrate an award that they have won. And that, for me, is always going to be great.
I want to say this, exceptionally well worded. Sincerely, I mean this sincerely. It's beautiful. It's emotive. I want to pause because that was a great answer. And for any of the aspiring shoutcasters out there, what Brice just did is an exceptional use of tempo. He slowed down his cadence. He had double spacing between his words, lowered his energy, and it was more powerful. So I want to round out that conversation. Now, for the very last round, Brice, before I give you a chance to say goodbye and let us know where we can find you and keep up to date, I've got a couple of quick fire questions. I say this with love and respect. Quick answers are not your strong suit in this conversation. So I'm going to challenge you to be as quick as you can. Okay. So, favorite game that you have ever casted?
Call of Duty. I'm just going to go with Call of Duty. It's an easy one.
Which one?
I can't remember the name of it. That's how bad it is. They all blur.
No, come on. Black Ops.
I'll give you an easy answer. Legion versus the LA Thieves. They come back on a hard point, and people will know which one it is.
Even better. One title you wished you had worked on earlier in your life.
StarCraft 2.
One word that describes your commentary style?
Emotive.
Will you vote for me for Esports Host of the Year?
No.
If you were not,
just hold on. I know we've got to do short answers. There is a reason I have to say no to that, by the way, that we're going to get away with. So people, because this is one of the things we didn't cover in the process bit here, is I have forfeited my vote as chairman in the awards. I don't vote on nominations or the actual winners anymore because I'm the most vocal voice in all of the calls. I didn't feel like it was fair to have undue influence in that way and vote. Okay, so I've actually forfeited my vote in the last 2 years. So I can't.
I appreciate that. What I was going to get is you could go to esportsawards.com and vote for me there, but that's irrelevant. That's if you never got into video games, what job would you be doing today?
Yeah, I'd probably be an engineer. Yeah.
That's amazing. What type of engineer?
Electrical,
construction. Ooh, okay. Okay. Aim higher, dude. You've got the ambition, you've got the drive. Brice, I want to say this legitimately has been like a really inspiring conversation, and I've had a great time. I actually legitimately want to make a longer conversation with you just discussing the craft commentary. That's for another time. What I would like to do is leave Origins by the Esports Awards on a final note. What advice would you give anybody looking to build a career in esports, a piece of advice that you've learned from your own journey?
Okay. Work hard, work honest, and all you've got to do what you want in esports is just to try and go out there and do it. It is an industry with a million opportunities, but only for those who are willing to get it.
Yep, that's it. Work hard, work honest. I think that's beautiful. Brice, where can people find you? What are your socials? What are you up to? Are you streaming? Give a little bit of a personal shout.
It's actually a bit of a weird time. I'm not really about this much content in the off season. But yeah, you can normally find me around the Call of Duty broadcast or occasionally dropping things on Twitter. I'm doing some side content at the moment for Turtle Beach. So make sure to check out Turtle Beach Games on TikTok for that. But yeah, just kind of keep an eye on some of my socials, like mostly Twitter. I'm usually going to put something on there if I'm working somewhere.
What's the handle?
I'm not the biggest fan.
Don't have a logo.
It's Brice Tacular. Brice Tacular.
There we go. Brice Tacular. Alan Brice. Bricey. That's where you find him on Twitter. Thank you so much, Bricey. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you. And this has been one of my favorite episodes of Origins by the Esports Awards. I've been your host, Quickshot. We'll see you next time.